Hello and welcome to the Home Assistant Podcast. My name's Phil Hawthorne. Joining me as usual, I have Mr. Rohan Karamandi. How's it going?
Good.
And joining us today, another fellow Aussie. I always love it when there's a fellow Aussie helping me out here. It's Alan. Good morning. Or sorry, it's good evening.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Good.
This episode is sponsored by Home Assistant Cloud by Nabucasa. Easily access your local Home Assistant instance remotely for a small monthly fee that supports the Home Assistant and ESP home projects. Configuration is done by the user interface, so there's no fiddling with router settings, SSL certs, or any other YAML.
So, Alan, all the way from Brizzy, the Sunshine State of Australia, up north.
Yes, the non-lockdown at the moment state.
Yeah, that's it. Very lucky. All right, so yeah, welcome to the podcast. And I guess let's start off with how we want to find out, where have you started using Home Assistant, and tell us a bit about your journey, how you got here.
Yeah, sure. I probably started in a bit of a different place from most people. I used to play around with the Arduino boards for a long time and spent ages just, mucking around with different sensors and, interfacing them and kind of playing with temperature sensors and ultrasonics and, all those kind of things just as that's interesting. I'll probably find a use for that one day. And so built up a whole lot of libraries and sort of sample code for those sorts of things over the years. But it's kind of hard because they obviously didn't have any sort of connectivity on them. So they were interesting as standalone devices, but not really kind of anything beyond that. And then the ESP8266 came along. So I started sort of moving a lot of those things to that device, and obviously that's got the Wi-Fi connectivity. So
and the Bluetooth as well. And
yeah, that started opening up a whole lot of other options there. So I started off using what's called ThingSpeak, the IoT platform, and pumping data up into that and doing some cool graphs and stuff.
Yeah,
and that was pretty interesting. And then from there, I actually moved on to Blink, the IoT platform. BLYNK. So, and that's, that was pretty good because that's got drag and drop and you can actually have switches and buttons and things that do things rather than just looking at your data. So I still actually use Blink at the moment. It's quite good for sort of standalone type devices, but it's not that easy when you've got multiple devices that you want to use together. And, when you do the sort of automations and tying it in with other devices around your house, it kind of gets a bit difficult to do things because you've obviously got to do it all as code in Blink. So I started looking for a bit of a better platform to kind of integrate a few of those platforms, and found Home Assistant and started mucking around with that and thought, yep, this looks like the right thing for me. So that would have been about mid 2018. So I think I got on board with it when it was around about version 0.68. So, obviously there was a lot of stuff that was still in YAML and not so much configuration via the UI at that stage. So it's good. I got a crash course in YAML as well. So that kind of that was a good exercise to kind of learn and get me set up with Home Assistant. So and from there I just kind of started looking for problems and thinking, what could I do with this, or how could I integrate that, or, how can I get these two sort of separate devices around the house that logically would make sense if they talk to each other to get them working, and just started building up the Home Assistant sort of options and configuration from there. So that's where it all started. And what's that? 3 years later, it's still going strong. So
that's awesome. So how do you, like you said, you used to use Blink and you still do a little bit, how do you delineate what you use where?
For the kind of, I guess, a one-off open close button type applications, or where I want a good mobile graph type experience, I tend to use Blink for that because it does have some better graphing capabilities, and it's also got some better sort of buttons and sliders and things like that, and it tends to be a bit more mobile friendly as well. So still use that for those sort of standalone type applications, whereas when the things that are more the automated and rely on different devices around the place that don't integrate with Blink, because obviously it's code that you've got to write and upload to the device. So that doesn't work with a lot of those off the shelf products.
And is it all cloud based, or is it locally?
Yeah, it is. It's cloud by default. You can run a local Blink server,
Right.
but I just went for the cloud option just to get it up and running in a hurry. So what I've typically done for a lot of those sensors around the place is I have the Blink code running on them, which sends the data to Blink, and also MQTT as well to send it to Home Assistant. So it goes to both of those platforms.
And is that like MQTT Discovery or just it's got its own?
No, I actually do all my MQTT manually. I don't know why I do that. I think it's just a legacy thing from when I started working in Home Assistant, and I've never kind of gone over to do it automatically.
Right.
Yeah, I just still do it manually for some reason. But every time I look at that, I think, I should change it to be automatic. I'll put that on the list.
That's it.
That's funny.
And so, is that a free API that you use, like with like up in the cloud, like that Blink? Do you have to pay per device you're pushing up to them?
Yeah, they've actually just brought out a new version in the last couple of months, and they've sort of changed the whole way that it interfaces, the whole model, everything. But previously, it worked on this concept of energy, and what you did was you bought energy in the app that you use on your phone, and each sort of widget that you put on a project uses a bit of that energy. So, simple buttons might use 200 energy units, but, graphs might use 800 energy units or something like that. So, so it's, and the good thing is it recycles. So if you delete the project and put all the widgets back, you get your energy back for them. So, but yeah, they've changed the business model now, and they're not doing it on the energy. It's like a per device way that they're doing the costs for that now. So I think they're still continuing to support the legacy model of doing that. So as long as they do, I'll probably just keep using it for those.
Interesting. Okay.
So I was just looking at their website really quick. It does look pretty neat. Like it does look like it's got a really nice UI to it.
Yeah, look, the buttons and the sliders, and like it's got, joysticks and all sorts of kind of really cool interface widgets that you can use to interact with devices. So it's actually, it is actually a little bit better than Home Assistant when it comes to that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Interesting.
And do you use that as an interface for your devices, or do you have them typically in a Lovelace dashboard that you would use instead?
I've got both. It just depends where I am and what I want to do. So some things it makes sense and they're a bit easier and quicker to do them using the Blink interface, and other things I use the Lovelace. So typically on the mobile, I'll sort of use Blink about half the time, I guess. Whereas on the desktop, I just use Lovelace all the time because it's obviously a better experience on the desktop.
Yeah, gotcha.
So what kind of cool stuff are you doing with both, I guess, or either?
Yeah, so because I had that kind of library of, I guess, sensors and interfaces and everything, I kind of went looking for problems, as I said. So
of course,
one of the first things that I did was back in the olden days when I had lots of time on my hand before kids, I used to do a lot of home brewing. So I don't do the home brewing anymore, but I kept my kegs that I used to use when I did the home brewing. So kegs are a really great way to store your beer. So now I just go to a local microbrewery and get them to fill the kegs for me. But it's almost impossible. Well, it's very difficult to tell how much beer is left in a keg, so you can do it by weight. And most people just kind of give a little bit of a rock back and forth. Oh, yeah, I reckon it's got a little bit left in it. So, so I thought, well, that won't do. That's not very IoT friendly way of telling how much beer you've got. So I actually built, I've got 3 kegs in the fridge, so I actually built a little load cell based on a sort of a little aluminium plate that sits under each of the kegs. And so what it does, it knows the tare weight of the keg when it's empty. So when I get a keg refilled and bring it back, I just put it on that scale in the fridge, and it sits in there permanently. And that weighs the keg once a minute.
Wow.
So I always know exactly how much beer I've got in the keg. And because it's real time as well, it also shows your consumption as you're drawing down, pulling a pint or two from each of the kegs as you go. So yeah, that was a pretty fun project. Also integrated that with Google Home as well, Google Assistant. So I can actually ask Google, hey, Google, how's my beer? And I'll get a reading of how many pints are left in each of the kegs, and also the temperature that the beer's at as well. So, that's a pretty good little party trick to show people when they come around.
This is awesome. So you've got, I want to just delve a little bit deeper into that, the weight sensor in the fridge. So how is that powered? Like, because obviously, being a fridge, it might be a moisture sort of area. You don't have power cords running into the fridge or anything. Is it battery based?
Yeah, so what I've got is each of the load cells comes back to out of the fridge via like a flat ribbon cable, and the ESP8266 that powers it all is actually based outside the fridge. Because you're right, Phil. If that was in the fridge, it'd start to get moisture on it. It probably wouldn't last very long. So that lives outside the fridge, which also. The Wi-Fi coverage in the fridge probably isn't too fantastic either. So it helps having that outside of the fridge. So so it's just got a ribbon cable that goes to each of the 3 load cells, and also the temperature sensor within the fridge as well. And then that just communicates via the Wi-Fi back to Home Assistant. So yeah, it works pretty well.
Yeah, because I know when I was automating my shopping list with Grocery, they support things like weighting of items, right? To work out how much, instead of, you've got liters of milk, right? And you've put the milk on a scale, you could tell, how much milk you have in stock, right? And I was always wondering, like, what is I saw, because, I'm not very, I don't want to consult or anything. I never used ESP32 for quite some time. And I was like, how does one get like a weight sensor? So I Googled what's the best weight sensor? There's got to be like a product on the market that does it. There's nothing really out there that does it. But it sounds like, this little thing that you've created here would be like the ideal place, right? Like get that weight, push it up through an API to Grocery, and then Grocery can say, hey, this is how much it's weighing at the moment. This is how much you've got in stock. Refill it, sort of thing. Because I'm thinking things in the cupboard like sugar, salt, all those things that have a weight that as you're consuming them go down would be a great use case.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess that's the advantage of sort of having that background in doing the hardware and the software, is that you can do a lot of bespoke sensors and applications that you just can't buy stuff for. I mean, it's just, there's nothing that's on the market that does that. So you can, do those sort of use cases that aren't really covered.
Yeah, cool. I'll have to look into these. What are they called? Like, it's for the weight? Like, is it a...
Yeah, so you get a so it's actually like a load cell, and it's basically like a little resistive pad that's glued to a sort of, it looks like a solid metal bar, but it deflects very slightly when you put weight on it.
Right.
And the resistance changes, and then it just goes through a very sensitive amplifier that amplifies the voltage change or the resistance change as the little metal bar bends when it gets weight on it, and then that produces an output that you can read on the ESP.
Beautiful.
Yeah, HX711. Yeah, I think there's been a few people on the show that have talked about them. I think one of your previous guests is talking about doing bed weighing and stuff, and they hadn't got them to work. And yeah, it did take a bit of tweaking, but they definitely work once you get them going.
Yeah, it was probably me saying that. Yeah. It's and that's the thing. I think I found that it was. I mean, I kind of stopped working on it just because I got distracted, but it's exactly it, right? It wasn't the easiest to set up, I will say, just to get it to read properly and things like that, and then maybe it was just my soldering skills are just that poor. I don't know, but it was.
There is a lot of mucking around with the calibration on them, because you've got to both work out the zero tear point of it and also what the delta is as the load changes on it. So they don't come calibrated. You've kind of got to put like 1 kilo weights on it and see like how much it changes for a 1 kilo weight, and then kind of work back from there. So, and each one is different. So you can't just sort of go, okay, well, I've bought one, now I can apply these same calculations to all of them. You've basically got to individually calibrate each of them. And I think that's probably where a lot of people come unstuck, is that if you don't realize you've got to go through that calibration process, you just get nonsensical readings from them. So that probably puts a lot of people off using those. So,
do you find that you have to recalibrate them?
No, never.
That's good.
No, I did calibrate them outside the fridge, and then I realized that the readings change on them when they're cold inside the fridge. So I did have to do one recalibration after I did the initial, put them in the fridge. But after that, they've been rock solid, and it's accurate to within, I guess, probably about half a pint. So you don't get too much variability across the whole range of keg from full to empty.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's also a good unit of measure of how many pints you have left, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's the most practical. Right. It's the most practical unit of measure you can have for a keg, right?
That's funny.
Cool. And I played with ultrasonic sensors a fair bit as well. So one of the things that I did was, like everyone, I made a remote control for the garage out of the ESP. 8266 with a relay, which is, one of the sort of most common projects that you see people do. But I also put a couple of ultrasonic sensors on it. So I use one that detects whether the garage, so it's one of those tilt type garage doors. So I basically got one sort of near the front of the garage and one in the middle of the garage, and the one at the front of the garage detects whether the door's up or down. So that gives me the sort of open, closed state of the door. But the one in the middle of the garage actually points to the roof of the car. So not only does it give you the door state, it'll actually tell you whether the car is in the garage or not, because basically it measures it and it goes, well, if it's less than a metre, it's reflecting off the roof of the car and therefore the car is in the garage. That's actually what I use for driving a lot of my presence and the state of the home as well. So I basically got my presence. Well, I've got an input select to basically whether you're home, whether everyone's home or not. That's based on once the car goes out of the garage, it then checks the presence of everyone's phones. If the phones are then not home, then it puts the house into an away state. Because I just found that using the ping type person detection was just a bit flaky with iPhones, because I think they turn the Wi-Fi sort of on and off.
Yeah, the Wi-Fi goes to sleep and all that sort of,
Yeah, so I tried to use that for presence detection and it just wasn't very reliable. So now I'm kind of using a combination of whether the car is in the garage or not and the geolocation on the phone, and that's been that's been rock solid. So I really like using the app geolocation for that presence stuff.
Have you gone to the level of being able to tell which car's parked in which part of the garage in case someone's parking in your spot?
Yeah, we've actually got two cars, and it actually knows the difference. One's a little bit shorter than the other one, so yes, I can actually tell which car's in the garage based on the height of the roof. So yeah, so that's a pretty handy thing to have as well.
Yeah, that's neat. So the ultrasonic, I guess, gives you, because that makes sense, right? Because it gives you the distance to the, or the distance of car A versus car B.
Yeah, and it's pretty. It's pretty coarse type of measurement. So basically, it goes well. If it's greater than about 1.5 meters, then there's no car in because it's measuring to the floor on the garage. If it's between sort of 1.5 and like 1.2 or something like that, then it's the little car, and if it's less than 1, then it's the big car. So that's how it kind of works out the distance. So.
No, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's cool.
What are you doing? Anything else for presence, or just those two, like just the phones and
no, just those. I have played around with Bluetooth a little bit to see if I could sort of use that, but yeah, I think it didn't really kind of work the way that I was wanting it to. So I pretty much stuck with the geolocation and the car status. That was as good as it's going to get, I thought.
Yeah. So, but what happens if you park it outside or something like that? Does that obviously that breaks that part, but does your do you still act as home?
Yeah, well, if it detects, so with the coming back to home, any of the presence detections will turn the house back into the home state. So if the car comes in, or it detects someone's phone, or you come back into the geolocation area, it'll know that you're back in. Because quite often, we'll go out, and then if we go somewhere close by, I might decide to walk home or something like that. So so it's a combination of those that I use to determine coming back home. And because it's an input select as well, if it's if you get it wrong, you can just go in manually and say I'm home, or turn it back to home, and it'll put the house back into home state rather than away state.
Right.
Have you found any issues where, like, if you're driving home, that your presence will change to home before you get there because of that geolocation? Sometimes like within like 50 meters of home or something like that. So it's not, that I'll be halfway across the suburb and it'll do it or anything like that. So it's usually, I think I've got my sort of home radius set to, 50 meters or something like that. So it's not too bad. It's done it once or twice, but it's pretty reliable. Okay, that's good. Yeah.
You mentioned you have kids. Are you doing anything for presence on that side, or?
No, I've just got the ping sensors on their phones, but again, they're not that reliable. So, they're still in their early teens, so we're mostly home when they're home.
Right. Okay.
Makes sense. And what have you got around the house, or how can other people interact with the house? Are you using any voice assistants around the home?
Yeah, I did start off using the Google Assistant platforms quite a bit, but it just like it. I just found. It just caused more problems. You know, the family acceptance factor on the Googles wasn't great because a lot of the time, you know, she wouldn't understand what I said, or the TV.
Classic Australian problem, right?
Yes, exactly.
You got to have an American accent to be able to talk to those things. Even if you've got the language set to Australian English, you got to fake an American accent to get it to do what you want it to do.
Yeah, and especially when you're doing, because I was doing routines that were doing stuff in Home Assistant as well, and you know. That's not available right now. So anyway, so I've sort of got a bit tired of those, and then I went to the Google Nest hubs, you know, the little screens, and they were really, really great until Google released a software update for them and broke the best function that they had. So you used to be able to cast to them using the inbuilt cast on Home Assistant, but Google released a software update, and now after 10 minutes they go back to displaying the clock screen. So so that was the end of Google Nest hubs for a cool interface platform. So I just ended up buying some cheapy Android tablets, and now I'm kind of using them as most of the around the house interfacing type devices. The other thing I've done just in the last few months is I hadn't really got into the Zigbee stuff before. I kind of thought, I've got my Wi-Fi, you know, that's all I need. But there's a few things where I'm like, that's going to be really hard to battery power that, or it's, you know, it's not going to work that way. So I started getting into the Zigbee stuff, and I hit the jackpot there, because just about the time when I started to look into that, you know, JB Hi-Fi, Phil, they were getting rid of all their Samsung SmartThings sensors.
Yeah, of course.
So
I can't believe Samsung SmartThings took so long to get out to Australia, and then when it did, they did like some commercial arrangement that like made it non-viable to come out here anyway. I think they did like an exclusive deal with, you know, all the motoring companies or something to do like a smart home sort of kit, and so you had to, if you wanted to buy it originally, when you wanted to be the first one to get a Samsung SmartThings, you had to be like either with, you know, your local motoring auto club or something to get their special deal. And then they slowly released out to all the retailers like Best Buy or JB Hi-Fi that we've got down here.
Yeah.
And I think by then, you know, everything had moved on, right?
Yeah, but the great thing was they basically sold them all for fire sale price. So the leak detectors and the multi-purpose sensors, I basically picked up like a dozen of each of those for $10 each, when they're normally like 30, 35 or $40. So so I got a Conbi at the same time and set up decons on that. So I just went crazy with those sensors. Like I put the leak detectors under pretty much every bathroom, every sink, the dishwasher, everything that has water in it got a leak detector, and most of the windows and doors got a multi-purpose sensor on them. So right place, right time for that. But that's the long way of answering that. I also got the buttons. I started getting a couple of the Zigbee buttons as well. And believe it or not, they're actually my kind of go-to interface now for switching things on and off, just because they just, like, they work, they're reliable, everyone understands how to press a button, right? So so for a lot of the simple kind of automations and the lights and the doors and those sorts of things, I've been moving a lot of that stuff off the tablet interfaces to just those buttons. So I've kind of got one, you know, beside the bed that I use for turning various lights on and off, and one in the garage for different bits and pieces. And I've been getting the Xiaomi ones because they've actually got 6 different modes that you can, so you've got 1 press, 2 press, all the way up to 5 presses, and a long press as well. So they can actually do 6 different things.
Which Xiaomi ones though? Like, are they wired in, or are they the battery ones?
No. It's the Xiaomi, it's the Mi. It's just a little coin cell.
Yeah, so I've got a whole bunch of those. So I've got like the single one and the double, because you can get the single press buttons and the double press, like they've got 2 sides to them. I've only ever been able to get like the single press to work on them. Maybe I've got an old version of the firmware running on them or something. I've got an old version of the Switch, but I'll have to look into it.
Yeah, well, I tried a few different ones. I tried some of the earlier Acquira ones, and also I had one of the Smart Things ones as well, which is okay. But yeah, these Xiaomi ones that I've got now, so they've got the six functions on them. So it's just one button, but like if you press it, depending on the number of times you press it, that's what it picks up on. So yeah, one press might be to turn these lights off, and two press might be to do those, and three might be to open the door or something like that.
Yeah,
so
that's cool.
yeah, and they're rock solid.
They're very responsive too.
Yeah. And when you're using them with your, MQTT out of Home Assistant, it's instantaneous. There's like no lag between when you press the button, when things happen. So, so just for a simplicity point of view, I've been moving a lot of those sort of interfacing back to those buttons just because they work and they're a great interface and everyone understands them. So.
Yeah, no, that's awesome.
How do you handle the sort of like the user interface in terms of instructions for people? So like, have you put like stickers or icons on the switches or something so people know like this button's going to turn on a light, this button's going to open a door, or I have to tap it 3 times to do this? Have you thought of that at all?
Yeah, for the ones that I use, that's fine. For the others, I have to put a little laminated card below them to explain to other people in the household what they do most of the time. So, yeah.
But at least there's so someone knows that they're gonna, if they flick that button, it's gonna turn the laundry light off and not accidentally turn on the fireplace and burn everything down, right?
Yeah, that's right. And the one in the garage, it's got I've done a little Google Home announcement, whereas if you press the one in the garage, because we've got a 2-story house and the garage is downstairs, and the kids will never voluntarily come and help you get stuff out of the car. So when you push the one in the garage, Google says someone needs help in the garage, and sometimes the kids come and help you. So
that's funny. I'm surprised it works regardless.
Maybe you need to change it to that if someone's fallen over in the garage and they need help, quick, right?
Yeah, or maybe, there's a treat for you in the garage or something like that. That'd probably get them down.
I was going to say that's probably the one that'll get them rather than someone's fallen or someone needs help. Just
yeah, exactly.
So what are some like really cool overall, like just really cool automations you've done?
So a few years ago, I got solar installed, and the inverter that I got has got a few features that kind of help out with Home Assistant. So it's got a consumption meter as well as a production meter. So normally with your solar, it'll tell you how much you're producing, but not how much your whole house is consuming. So I got one with a consumption meter as well, and also a load switching relay. And it's also got Wi-Fi and a good API as well. So Home Assistant actually has the Fronius integration out of the box as well. So what I've done is I pull the current production and consumption of the solar into Home Assistant, and then use that to drive a few sort of energy saving automations. Right. So like the hot water, it heats up during the day. So I've just got a normal like electric solar storage hot water. So what happens is that heats up during the day when the solar is producing, but then it doesn't heat again sort of overnight. But what that means is that, if you're the first person in the morning, you'll likely get a cold shower out of it. So what I've done is, at 4 o'clock in the morning, I check the temperature from my outside weather station, and then do a boost of the hot water just enough so that you get a hot shower. So obviously in summer, where it's easily over 20 degrees in the morning here, it boosts it back up to 50 degrees. But in winter, it boosts it back up to 56 degrees because, that's a 50-degree shower in winter doesn't feel like a hot shower, whereas a 50-degree shower in summer feels like a hot shower. So, yes, I'm kind of using that just enough electricity to heat it back up again so you get a hot shower in the morning. And I was listening to the podcast from last week, and the new... what's the one where you can use? It's the... Hang on, I'm just trying to remember what it's called. Oh, the referencing other entities in the triggers.
Yes.
Yeah, because at the moment I've kind of got that hot water one, and I've also got an air conditioner one similar, where the air conditioner will run depending on whether you're exporting solar or not. So they're this kind of kludgy automation at the moment that isn't great, and it uses input selects as well. So it works, but it's not fantastic.
Right.
But with that referencing other entities in triggers, that's going to clean up a whole bunch of stuff and make those automations a whole lot cleaner. So, yeah, so I need to get onto 2021.7 soon so I can use that, because that will be something that will tidy up a whole bunch of those unpleasant automations that I've got. I mean, they work, but they're not pretty, right?
Yeah, it's kludgy, right? It's a little messy in how you build them.
Yeah. So, and all up, like I worked it out with the automations that I'm running now, as opposed to, before I was just turning stuff on when I felt like it and turning it off when I felt like it, probably saving about $400 or $500 a year in electricity.
Yeah.
So, so it's a good, good return on investment of my time and effort to figure out how to do these things. So.
And to get the API from your solar system, was that something that you specifically did research on and said, from when you're looking to install your solar, said, yes, I want this sort of system set up? Or was it something that was just a standard that you were surprised that came with it?
Yeah, well, I was probably just lucky because the inverter that I got, I knew it had a Wi-Fi interface, so that was kind of my level of knowledge of that at the time, because I got that before I got Home Assistant. Yep. So yeah, it was just lucky that I managed to get one that actually had an open API, which I could have queried with just any old piece of software, but also that it had an integration already with Home Assistant. So that was pretty lucky, because if that hadn't been the case, then I wouldn't have had that flexibility and been able to do a lot of those things. So yeah, so that's been good. And I retrofitted the air conditioner as well, because it's just a standard a dumb air conditioner with an infrared remote. Because back in my Arduino days, I had all my infrared libraries. I basically just set up a learning infrared remote, pointed the aircon remote at it, and kind of just recorded all the codes for, on, off, cool, dry, fan, temperature up, temperature down. Then just built an infrared transmitter that sits on the wall opposite the air conditioner, and just fires infrared code to the air conditioner. So yeah, that was a good way to turn a dumb air conditioner smart for not a lot of money. So.
Yeah, no, that's awesome.
And then you can even get things like the Sensibo, and I think there's, in the Z-Wave world, there's proper Z-Wave infrared controller for air conditioners as well, right? So you can bring them in as proper entities instead of just having to fire off dumb infrared commands at things too. Yeah.
Well, I put a temperature sensor in that as well, so it actually, so it measures the temperature of the lounge room where the air conditioner is. And also got, for the power monitoring, just for the appliances, I'm just using, the standard sort of power monitoring plugs. But for those high power appliances like the hot water and the aircon, I've actually got the split core current measuring devices on them, and they go back to an ESP that's running the EMON package on those. So that's how that information gets into Home Assistant. So both the whole house consumption I get from the inverter, but also individual devices and appliances I get from plugs or those current transformers on those as well. So got a good picture of what's actually on and what's using power and what's going where.
So what do you have, like a list of devices that you're trying to track power against? Like have you got like the main appliances like fridge, freezer and all that tracked, or then the TV, I'm guessing?
Most of the fridges. Also have the washing machine as well, just for the notifications when it's done. So I've just got the, measure the power consumption of that. Obviously, the big consumers of the power are the air conditioning and the hot water. So, I like to know when they're on as well, just to make sure that they're on at the right time and I'm not spending money where I don't need to.
Yeah, and those are just those passive clamp style ones that you use, right, to pull the power? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And they interface easily with the ESP8266, so I just use those, yeah. With the ESPs, I said all my code on there is stuff that I've written, but I was listening to Phil talking last podcast about his ESP home experience there, so I haven't gone down that path yet, but it does sound like it's pretty interesting, so I might give that a go. I'll add it to the list.
Exactly right. You have a growing list.
Yeah.
Yes.
No. Yeah. ESP Home is. I don't know. I think it's great personally for someone that doesn't. That's not super coding literate, if you want to call it, right? Or programming literate, like in that sense. It just makes things easy, right? And just interfacing into even things like Home Assistant, things like that, it just kind of just does it. So it's really nice.
Yeah, and sometimes I want that. Sometimes I do want to write the
Sure.
code and have the different sensors and whatever. And I know that that's something that I've got to write the code for. But sometimes I just want something simple. I'm just like, maybe I can just put ESP Home on it and it's done, and I don't have to worry about all that other stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
And ESP Home's all YAML based anyway, so you've already done the hard work learning YAML to begin with. So
yeah.
Have you guys done anything with the 3D floor plans at all?
I attempted quite some time ago. I think I actually had it pretty nicely at one point, but I guess so I'm using like Amazon Fire tablets around the house. And I just find that they don't have enough, especially with Lovelace. Lovelace is now becoming it's more modern than what the old Amazon Fire tablets I've got are capable of running. Really, I've got fully kiosk running on those things, so it's like a nice kiosk experience. But for whatever reason now that's crashing. I just found that the tablets were too slow to do things. And also it was very hard, yes, I'd have this nice looking, awesome 3D plan. And then you'd have this like little icon from Home Assistant to where a light would be, and you wouldn't see it necessarily easily. Right. And then I was like, it doesn't, like, for me, it was just like, nah, it's not a good user experience. Yes, it's cool, like as a show off factor, but I didn't want to, I didn't have enough time and will to want to put heaps of design into it, which I didn't think was going to be able to used by me, right?
Oh yeah, it's a if you want to go down that rabbit hole, you'll burn tens, if not hundreds of hours doing that. So I played around with it for a while. I actually got it, similar, I think, Phil, where it's pretty happy, but if you want to then kind of make it that perfect experience, like I would have easily sunk another 100 hours in it to make it beautiful. But
Look, even some of the ones online, I've seen people where, like, you tap a room when the light is on, and then it'll have like a dark state and then a light state for when the light's on. Like, that stuff is cool, and I understand like the appeal to that. But for me, the amount of effort to get to that level, I couldn't justify it, right?
Yeah, well, that's what I did. I did a few rooms with that tap for lights, and also did with the car presence in the garage as well. I also did the room indicator for the garage. Actually shows you a car in the garage when the car's in the garage, and the garage empty when the car's out of the garage. So
I think I saw someone actually animate their car driving in and out of the garage. I was
there's a couple.
Yeah, no, I didn't go that far. Again, that's probably 100 hours you'd burn to do that easy.
Yeah, it's again, I think that's my hesitation too, right? It's like if you want to do it, and don't get me wrong, there are some that are very, very, very nicely done, right? But it's the amount of effort that goes into that and I think, Phil, you're kind of the same way as well. And like, I don't primarily use the Home Assistant interface to drive Home Assistant, right? I primarily use what's all automations and then voice to kind of augment a lot of that. But I think that's the thing. Like, I think it'd still be pretty cool to have just like a status, like when you walk in the house or whatever, just a little tablet that shows, what's happening at home, right? So
I think that's where I'm sort of like starting to head towards too, especially since like starting to use like the soft UI approach, nice big button cards that, have, meaning behind them. So I'm sort of, if I ever, in my next house, I'm going to, try and get like a proper tablet that has more RAM behind it that can actually run Lovelace properly, and maybe a bigger screen, and just have like, Lovelace as the home's dashboard, right? And just have widgets, basically like an iOS notification shade, right? The dishwasher's dirty, go ahead. The washing machine's done. There's mail in the mailbox. Just status updates that people can see. And then maybe some modes, like toggle, movie mode on or off, or toggle guest mode on or off. Just big buttons. Not any of this Lovelace or even just old, entity switches and all that. Like anything that we would, as an admin, I would need to use it, yes, if I need to go in and see a state or something. But I think anything else could just be a little notification that can be read from afar, basically, and just.
Yeah. One of the things I did do with 3D Plan, which was good, was that we've got, like, there's a lot of doors around the house. We've got probably 6 or 8 sort of doors to get in and out of the house. And just because we've got upstairs deck and downstairs and garage and front door and side door and all that sort of stuff. So, so I made the floor plans so that if any doors were open, they turn red on the floor plan. So it's actually a good little indicator to just, do a quick visual check of it and just say, okay, well, nothing's red, so therefore all the doors are closed and we don't have to, we haven't accidentally left anything open. So that's...
see, that would be like a cool thing for a central sort of, tablet in the kitchen or something, right? And you can just quickly glance over at it.
Yeah, rather than sort of scrolling through a list of entities and going, oh, yeah, open, yeah, so that's pretty neat. But, yeah, same sort of thing as you feel. You get to a state and you go, yeah, it's good. If I wanted to make it fantastic, it would be lots of extra time,
Yeah.
You need like a team of people behind you to get everything perfect.
That's right.
Yeah. Oh, and it's like it's that sort of image manipulation. So it's like it's a couple of pixels here and hang on. No, is it 87% or 87.2%? And yes,
and if you've got two tablets with different screen sizes and it doesn't scale correctly,
yeah, exactly. So it's perfect. I've actually got two of them. I've got one for the desktop where all the icons are perfectly aligned, and I've got another version for the mobile app. Because the overlay icons are slightly different. So because I've actually overlaid my surveillance cameras onto it as well, so I can just look at the plan, and if I want to see a camera, I've got a camera icon on all the cameras. So, that works well, but they are sort of they're misaligned if you use the desktop one on the mobile and vice versa. So I've got to do a different one with different spacing and positioning. So, it does take a bit of work to get it nice.
That's cool.
What solution did you go with for your cameras?
I actually bought, believe it or not, the super cheapy eBay China cams just because I know how to firewall them off and I know how to talk to them via either the interface or curl or, I can do that stuff with them. I would probably never recommend buying those for anyone who didn't have that level of capability because they're not consumer friendly by any stretch. The interfaces on them are pretty terribly written,
probably terribly translated as well.
Yeah, exactly. But if you're good with curl and you can use that to do a lot of the interfacing, as long as they've got RTSP and OnVIF, that's really all you need from them because they can do everything like that. The only exception is where I specifically wanted like a PoE camera. So most of them are Wi-Fi, but I had a couple of PoE, so I actually bought a Rio Link for that one, so a name brand one. And I've just actually put a video doorbell in as well. So I got a Hike Vision for the video doorbell because, again, it's actually got an API on the doorbell. So the neat thing is one of the endpoints, API endpoints, tells you whether doorbell is idle or ringing. So what I do is I poll that endpoint once a second just using the REST sensor from Home Assistant, and that's my doorbell. So
damn, they can't do a webhook because having to poll for that seems mighty frustrating.
Yeah, right? Although it's hardwired, right? It's PoE and it's
Is it local or does it go up to a cloud?
No, that was local. So I had a pretty strict set of criteria when I was looking for this doorbell. So I wanted it to be PoE, I wanted it to be local, I wanted it to be RTSP, and I wanted it to work with Home Assistant. So, that narrows the list. Oh, and it's got to work in Australia. So that narrows your list down to about 2.
Sure.
So I got this Hike Vision and it's been really good. So the polling is a bit of a pain, but again, it's been rock solid. Basically, you press the button on the doorbell and Google Lady tells you there's someone at the door. Also get the the pop-up via the iOS app on my phone as well. So I'm using the automation of that to do a notification to the phone as well. So it's pretty handy having that in Home Assistant because I haven't got anything else triggered particularly off it yet, but if I wanted to, I could tie that into pretty much anything else around the house that I wanted. So
sure, that's cool.
That might have to be my replacement for the Ring video cam I've got, because I've got like the battery Ring video cam and the delay in I can hear someone's pressed the doorbell, right, and it's ringing outside before the little lady of the Amazon Echoes has told me that there's someone at the front door. And I've got the Echo shows around the house for her to show who's at the front door. But I'm sitting there waiting, a few, 30 seconds for the video to pop up on those things. By the time then the delivery man's gone and assumed I'm not home, right?
Yeah.
So, I think being local based and not having to rely on the cloud and all that would be much better.
I think the problem is battery too, right?
Yeah. And I read like all those reviews of the Rings and all those the Eufys and all those other ones, and I spent probably far too much over analyzing it. But yeah, I ended up getting with that local control and the RTSP. I use Blue Iris for my video recording solution, so it had to integrate with Blue Iris. So it's been pretty good. There's all sorts of other stuff you can do with the API as well, but I haven't kind of spent the time on that. I had a bit of a play with Deep Stack as well to try and get the person recognition on it, and I kind of got that working, but not quite. So that's on the list as well.
You're just opening this up for Phil to grill me around. It's,
Yeah, Rohan's already built his Deep Stack stuff to do delivery people. He can just get you the code.
That's right. I wish. Though I got to say, I don't know if I mentioned this on the show, but I got it. I was telling Phil offline, but I was playing around with OpenCV just for some stuff I was doing for work for a customer, and it's actually pretty cool. You can do a bunch of interesting things, right? So I was manipulating video to like blur faces dynamically as it detects a face and like doing that kind of stuff. It's actually pretty neat.
Yeah, I think it's got heaps of potential. I thought, I'll set it up quickly and it'll work and it'll be great, and it didn't. So I thought I'll add it to the list. I haven't actually done that much with lights and light switches. I've only got sort of a handful of those, I guess, because I kind of came at it from the opposite direction to a lot of people who probably start off with the lights and switches. I've just got a couple of the sort of Wi-Fi switches.
What's your plan of attack for lights? So you're going to go switches, going to go smart bulbs, or?
Yeah, I think I'm going to go with the switches. I think so. Because the thing about the switches, I guess it's good, is that you can always override that if someone turns the switch off accidentally. Whereas if it's just a smart bulb, you can't necessarily override that. Yep. So I kind of like the switch idea. When I do a few more of them, I may have a different view of it, but that's kind of what I'm thinking.
If you go Zigbee switches, they'll because they're powered, they'll increase your mesh network too.
Yeah, I've just got the house is pretty good. It's just like a timber frame, so my Zigbee stuff works mostly except the sort of extremes. So I just got one of those repeater plugs that's on a power board kind of in the middle of the house because the Conbi's downstairs. Yep. So I've just got one of those repeater plugs for upstairs, which works pretty well, but I do need to extend it because in some of the corners of the house, like they'll drop off sort of once a week or something like that.
Always in the most inconvenient time.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, I've actually got one in the fridge. I put one of the temperature sensors actually inside the fridge upstairs. I just stuck it to one of the shelves in the fridge. And that's got an automation on it because, the kids sometimes just leave the fridge door just that tiny bit ajar. And, living up here in Brisbane in summer, you come back to it after it's been open for half an hour and everything in there is saturated because it's so humid.
Yeah.
So, so I put one of those little Zigbee temperature sensors in the fridge, and I've just got an automation that runs on that. When it gets over 10 degrees for more than 5 minutes, it tells you the fridge door is left open, so you go and close the fridge door and it's all good. That one's a bit flaky, I think, because it's kind of far away from the repeater and the Conbi, and it's also inside a metal box as well, so that doesn't help. But so if I think that's a good idea, Phil. So if I went with that, I would have a lot more repeaters around the place. So I may actually go for those Zigbee switches rather than the traditional Wi-Fi. And
there's actually some pretty nicely designed ones available in Australia now. Like generally, I've always been, get Z-Wave, for switches and, anything critical, but there's a lot of good Zigbee stuff being available and, alter code now as well. So they look nice. I think it used to be was it Mirabella, and you get the nice momentary buttons from them and then pair them against a Z-Wave socket behind it. But now I think you can get some really nice, like a full kit of just Zigbee stuff available in Australia.
Yeah, cool.
So,
yeah, I might have a look at that because my Wi-Fi is starting to get a bit congested with all the stuff that's on there, and especially the cameras as well. Like they chew a lot of that. So.
Especially Wi-Fi cameras.
Yeah, so I might move some of that stuff to Zigbee. So that's probably a good idea. Put one of the Zigbee, the multi-purpose sensors that I got, because they do vibration as well. So, talk about looking for a problem for a solution. So I put one of them inside the letterbox, and so when the postie puts the mail in the letterbox, it wobbles slightly, and so the vibration sensor on that tells you've got mail.
Especially now that they've cut the postie funding, so you get like deliveries of letters like every other day, right? You don't even know when you're going to get a letter anymore. So now you need to constantly.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Because they'll do like parcels every day, but for letters, which you're hardly getting because everything's email, right? But for that one bank that doesn't support email yet because they're living in the Stone Age, and you get that letter from the postie. You don't know when it's coming. So, because I never check my letterbox unless the sensor goes off, right?
Yeah. So because that was inside the letterbox, which is metal, I had to pull that sensor apart, and I actually put like an external wire antenna on as well. So the antenna was outside the letterbox. So
interesting.
Couldn't make the whole letterbox the antenna.
No. Actually, didn't even think of that. I should have thought of that. So yeah.
See, it's unfortunate we can't. We over here we have community mailboxes, right? So they're basically these giant metal mailboxes outside wherever that are. It's just got like 20 slots to one of them or whatever, 25 slots to one of them, and then there's like in my case there's 3 of them. Sometimes I've seen like 9-10 of them in a row, right? But it's all like owned by Canada Post, so you can't like drill through it or anything, right? Like, but
well, you can, but there's probably consequences,
you can do a lot of things. That doesn't make it a good idea, right?
How far away are they from your house, though? Like if they're all community mailboxes?
I'm actually lucky. Mine is directly opposite to my house. I've got a fire hydrant and the post office there, so it's great for A, insurance rates, and B, just convenience. But so it's directly.
So is that like out in the street, or is it?
Yeah. In my case, it's on the opposite side of my street. It's not too far. Like I think I could. It'll probably be reaching the bounds of where my if I was using Zigbee as an example, where my Zigbee mesh would be. But it's also proper metal, right? So I don't actually think it'll penetrate through that.
I wonder if you could, like, if you really wanted a sensor in that mailbox, you could probably do something like LoRaWAN, which is that like Wi-Fi that can last like kilometers, right? Surely that.
I could, but it's still in a giant metal box, and the one.
But I'm thinking like if it can do like kilometers of range though, and you only need it to go, like not very far from the other side of the street, you might be able to get
it might work for that.
I think you might be pushing it, but honestly, I don't care that much because nothing ever arrives, and nowadays nothing
important. It's always a bill or a fine that you don't want to open anyway,
exactly.
Right?
So why bother, right? So it's taxes. Okay, great. Like
all right, cool. All right, well, Alan, thank you so much for your time and sharing all your interesting stuff. You've definitely given me some ideas, particularly around weighing stuff in the fridge. I'm going to have to do my research on that.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for having me, and thanks for running the podcast. I try and listen to it every couple of weeks when it comes out, and I always manage to learn something new or add something else to the list. So that's always good.
That's right. That's right. It's helping people spend money since.
Or helping people burn tens of hours since.
That's right.
Yeah. Going down many more rabbit holes trying to think how can they make more problems for themselves.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, thank you very much. Cheers.
All right, thanks, guys.
Cheers.
If you want to share your Home Assistant journey or come on as a guest, reach out to us at feedback@hasspodcast.io. That's HASS podcast.io.
The Home Assistant Podcast is hosted by Phil Hawthorne and myself, Rohan Karamandi. For links to topics we discussed today, check out our show notes on hasspodcast.io.